GeoAI because it's a fundamental change. I think it's going to change geospatial that much. It's a fundamental overriding change of the entire industry.
Today's conversation is with Tee Barr, a leader in our industry and the director of geospatial products at Verisk and a counselor at the American Geographical Society. And today we are diving into some big questions around AI. If you're wondering what's next in our field, the tech, the business impact, and the ethical questions, this conversation will give you a front row seat.
Through geospatial artificial intelligence, we'll slowly push ourselves into complete ubiquitousness with normal data sets. In 2050, geography is just going to be another aspect of everything.
Tee and I dive deep into the upcoming Geography 2050 event, this year focusing on GeoAI. We explore how artificial intelligence is already transforming how we analyze climate risk, supply chains, finance, and national security. But it's not just about technology, it's about the responsibility that comes with it.
In Geography 2050, we cover multiple subjects. It's one event, we're in one room, and we talk about all sorts of stuff. I'm running 2 different panels this year. One is on GeoAI and risk, financial risk and climate risk, as well as one is GeoAI and supply chain. But we're doing stuff from human security, DoD stuff.
We also get into the growing field of geospatial ethics, making sure the models we build don't scale bias or race communities, and how events like Geography 2050 are shaping the next generation of leaders.
One of the big pushes for the GeoAI conference in November is geospatial ethics.
Whether you're a geospatial professional trying to understand where AI fits, a business leader looking at climate and risk analytics, or an educator thinking about the next wave of talent, this episode will help you see where the field is heading and why it matters right now. The future is spatial, so let's get into it.
I'm Tee Barr. My current day job is the director of geospatial products and solutions at Verisk Extreme Event Solutions, supporting the insurance industry, mostly the NatCat space. I've been in geospatial since for 2 millennia now, I should say, because it started in 99. So yeah, I've been around. I cut my teeth initially in international development, and then after 9/11, I moved into defense and intelligence, and from there, just kind of bounced around. And then in 2019, I got a job offer for the insurance industry. I'm like, ooh, geo is like over there. So that's where I am now.
All right, awesome. Tell me a little bit about we're here to talk today a little bit about Geography 2050. And I want to get into that and kind of understanding, kind of where the event's building to and all the different things like that. Given that it's kind of a future forward event, and, I know you share a lot of your opinions on LinkedIn and you have a really strong presence there. What do you see as kind of where the space is going? And I know it's a really broad question, but I want to get a picture of that and then talk about how that's going to lead into what the AGS is doing in the event and things like that. But what are the big things that you're focusing in on right now?
So when professionally, I'm focusing on, implementing our stuff so we can perform our modeling more rapidly in the cloud, so our clients can get better information. But from a personal perspective, I'm working really deep in spatial finance, trying to build that infrastructure within fintech. So the various quants over at on the dark side of data analysis, they start implementing and leveraging geospatial data within their analyses. It's no longer just time; it's also X, Y, Z. Because there's always been a bigger gap, but we're starting to bridge it now. That's why I've been going down to New York a lot, talking in Climate Week, talking like Arvids and stuff like EO Summit, and trying to build that connective tissue.
Yeah, I think there's a lot. I mean, obviously a lot that can be applied into finance. These different cases, I've seen it, and I've seen different companies and organizations really start to adopt it in different ways. And it really, there's a ton of work that goes into that, building the teams and everything around that. But from kind of what you've seen and some of the big themes out there, I know one of them is of course AI and all the different stuff that's happening around that. Can you lay some of the groundwork on I know the theme for Geography 2050 is AI and GeoAI, kind of the focus. How is that playing out in the real world, and kind of how is that going to, kind of manifest itself at the event?
So Geography 2050 is an event where we have a different topic every year, and usually it's in oceans, it's been food security. I initially got involved with the AGS when they were doing risk analysis or geospatial risk. The council and I decided that it should be GeoAI because it's a fundamental change. And in my opinion, it's the level of as soon as we had GPSs, right? I think it's going to change geospatial that much. It's a fundamental overriding change of the entire industry. I can read you I've been working on my initial speech, if you can tell. So in Geography 2050, we cover multiple subjects. It's one event, we're in one room, and we talk about all sorts of stuff. I'm running two different panels this year. One is on basically GeoAI and risk, financial risk and climate risk, as well as one is GeoAI and supply chain. But we're doing stuff from human security, DoD stuff, various. I'm not to give away the ghost here, but there's various government directors and such that should be appearing on stage to talk about GeoAI and how it impacts their mission. The Geography 2050 has its core is just talking about it. We don't do technical workshops. We do informational workshops for a number of AP geography teachers. We bring them to New York for the event. But outside that, we don't have here's how to use QGIS in this or how to use ArcGIS in this. It's very much more a conceptual, academic, thought leadership event.
Yeah, there's a ton moving, and GeoAI has a lot of different components to it that I think make it particularly interesting. AI has been thrown to the forefront of everyone's thinking with, everything that's happening around LLMs, agents, the works there. And that, I think that's going to be probably part of some discussions that are going to happen there. But
yes,
geospatial has existed with AI in many different ways for a long time. Any satellite image that's been used and analyzed and probably in some way eventually will make its way into AI in some way to pull features from that and extract information from that. And there's a ton of things happening in that space. As you talked about in finance, I know a lot of people want to use geospatial features in machine learning, in data pipelines that can tell them make better decisions, predictive analytics, anything around that space. And then now we have this third bucket that I've been pretty interested in to see how and what that means for what we're doing with LLMs, agents, all these different pieces. And I think that's really interesting because I think sometimes it gets kind of convoluted with the foundational models as well. Where it's like, okay, now we have these, foundational or, some of the, other models that are being brought forward, like Alpha Earth and stuff like that, where they're embeddings. It kind of feels like, there's this moment in geospatial where we could have like a general model, a chat GPT for the Earth. So there's a lot happening in that space. How is that going to kind of bring itself out in some of the discussions? And I guess also I'd love to hear your take on some of those pieces that are coming forward with foundational models, embeddings, LLMs. How's that changing the mix of just the discussions you're hearing people have?
It's funny you talk about how Geo has been doing AI for a long time. I also teach at Northeastern. I teach GeoAI now, but I just really changed the name of the class from computer vision to GeoAI, right? Because that's basically the marching orders I have in the department. But as far as the Geography 2050 goes, we'll have another number of luminaries on stage discussing the various aspects from foundational models, like you said, LLMs, foundational models, of some of the academic foundations that led to the development of those things, as well as real cutting edge technology from out of the Taylor Geospatial Institute and their recent AWS. I don't know what to call it.
It was like the AI challenge, right?
No, that's right. It was the AI challenge. I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
I forgot what it was. So we're gonna have some of those folks on stage. So it's gonna be we're gonna get the foundational information, the foundational knowledge, as well as what's on the cutting edge, right? And what folks are doing with it. From my personal opinion, I feel that GeoAI it's really gonna ramp up the integration of geospatial analytics in the normal data sets. For years, Nadine talked about this a while back about how it's not called geotaxi, it's called Uber. So it's a thing that through geospatial artificial intelligence will slowly push ourselves into complete ubiquitousness with normal data sets, because everything will be integrated within an AI framework. Regardless of the various models or agents we use, it's going to be in that giant bucket of data. So it'll just be, I see in 2050, geography is just going to be another aspect to everything. It's not going to, I don't see it being specialized.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's weird because I think it's what we as an industry have been trying to march towards is we want it to be just another data type, just another thing that people can use. And increasingly we're getting very close to that. And I think, for me, what's particularly interesting is if that becomes the case, we still need to do a better job about having everyone understand spatial thinking and some of those foundations that we kind of take for granted every day that we're using and going out about. I mean, it's interesting because I think you pointed out you're bringing some AP features there. I think, that foundational education piece where people are getting that even before college or anything like that is going to be incredibly important. So It's cool to hear that that's all happening, because if we do a good job of bringing this to everybody and making it ubiquitous, we still want to have people understanding all those different pieces. And AGS is a core component of advocating for those things, doing those different pieces. AGS is the organization that puts on Geography 2050. Tell me a little bit about how AGS is kind of involved, for people that aren't familiar, what are their goals and missions? And then how does that kind of manifest in an event like this?
So the American Geographical Society, AGS, is the oldest geographic organization in the U.S. It was originally founded by Samuel Morse to help it was basically to fund an Arctic expedition back in the 1840s. And so all sorts of storied people have been on the board, Teddy Roosevelt and other folks, right? And in 2023, they lowered the bar enough to let me on. So that's where we are with that. But AGS's mission...
You raised the bar. You didn't lower the bar. Come on.
I'm self-deprecating. So basically what our mission is to bring geospatial thinking to students, right? Our core thing is geospatial education. The counselors come from all walks, mostly academia, some are defense, a lot of government contractors, and a few people from the private sector like myself, and how we can bring spatial thinking to those industries and how we can train the next generation to think spatially, which is why we work so much with through youth mappers and other organizations and other initiatives, we push that stuff forward. We also have a ethical geo, which is the ethics around geospatial data and information that we support. We have webinars and podcasts and stuff about that as well. One of the big pushes for the GeoAI conference in November is geospatial ethics and AI ethics.
It's going to be a key part. I mean, when you think about if increasingly more tasks or more things we're doing, we're handing off to an AI of sorts. I know that's like AI is the umbrella term, but if we think about even image detection, right? How do we ensure that we're detecting the right things? How do we take that as truth or not truth? How do we have human in the loop type of interactions? There's a ton of really good thinking going on around this topic. I tend to focus in on the technology because that's kind of my area of interest. But how do we embed those ideas and concepts into the core technology is going to be really important. And especially when we look at if we do hand off geospatial tasks to agents, right? Even simple decisions, as we know, understanding space can have pretty dramatic consequences. So we can't always just pass that along and let the agent do that. I think there's a place for agents handling simple tasks, shuffling, doing that type of stuff, even doing things as much as, basic geospatial processing tasks. Like, if you know what a buffer is and how to create one, an agent can do that. So think these, within AI as a separate topic, guardrails and even around to hallucinations and things like that become a very important discussion and topic. And how do we, kind of focus in on that from a geospatial perspective is really interesting. What are those things that are starting to get talked about from the perspective of geospatial and ethics in AI? I'm just kind of curious to hear what you've been hearing.
So right now this is really a budding field. Like AI ethics is a budding field. I had a podcast on the AGS site with the AI ethicist from the UN, and we had this long discussion about how the ethics of AIs and the political culture around AIs. It was a very interesting conversation. But as far as like that goes, it's basically who gets mapped, what data gets pulled out, right? There's this whole thing where lesser developed areas, even in the developed world, like poor neighborhoods don't get mapped as much, and they're hotter, and they tend to be because they don't have the same kind of tree covers and stuff like that. So because we focus on certain areas of the cities to build our stuff, our models take those biases and basically make them scale, and we ignore like the lower income aspects, the lower aspects of the society. There's an average like 10 to 15 degrees hotter than the downtown and the places with a canopy. And AI agents won't see that.
There's a ton of examples. I mean, just I've listened to some different podcasts, and just innately the things that you kind of embed in the work that you do, but whether like it or not, even into image generation, right? There were some that were just testing, and all the images kind of look the same, right? When they're creating them, and they, that's just some of the inherent biases we all bring to the table that look like that. And I think, I've been really interested in, some of those different things and how they play out in models that we're building that we're creating assumptions on, but not always looking at. I think one that I was kind of interested in is, this concept of like food deserts I was playing around with. I think we kind of know what constitutes a food desert. And I think even New York actually has a data set that classifies food deserts and actually shows what that looks like. But there's also this concept of like, that's one aspect of public health. There's like the whole fitness aspect of that as well. And of course, I think I think one easy way to look at that is like, do people have access to gyms or something like that? But that's like one very small piece of health and fitness. And you have to look at all the different pieces that are there. Are there parks, roads, stuff like that? And when I look at the data, when I look at things like, even data from OSM or Overture, it captures some of those pieces, but not in great detail. And that's actually, it was like a perfect case where I was like, can I figure out where there's like recreational fields across the world? And, image detection and AI was actually a very, fundamental way to do that. Can I figure out where there are baseball fields, large open grass areas and things like that? Because within, a park could be anything. I'm in New York. We have parks that are like a little triangle of flowers, but it's classified as a park for whatever reason. So there's all these things that, you want to start to pull out, but these are bits and pieces that go into that thinking. And I think it's going to be really important to build some structure around that, which will be really interesting over time. Yeah, with all the pieces that are kind of coming together, can you give us a layout of what the event's going to look like? Kind of who's, maybe not who's going to be there, but like some of the different topics that people could expect, and then a little bit about, I think broadly, for your past experience, kind of what people might want to, be looking forward to.
So the event itself is November 20th and 21st. At the Columbia Climate School. We have it. This year it's in two different buildings because of a scheduling error. But it's going to be, the first day is usually we get up and we talk about the conference, what's going to happen. Chris Tucker and our president Marie Price get on stage and kind of get a layout what Geography 2050 is. Then I'm going to get up and speak for like 10 minutes about GeoAI and where it's going. And then from there we jump into a thing about climate security and geospatial artificial intelligence. And just kind of, that's the top of the roller coaster. And then I do a thing on fintech and climate risk and GeoAI. And then again, we dive into human security, emergency response, some various defense topics, and human security. And there's and then again we have the folks from the AWS challenge from the Taylor Geospatial Institute. They'll be speaking about what they did and how they're expanding the field of GeoAI. And then at the end of each day we have about 10 lightning talks, which are a hodgepodge of various topics, right? We have students, we have companies, we have academics, and they get up, and this is actually fun because we limit them to 5 minutes, and it's strict. 5 minutes. It's a very strict 5 minutes. Their slides go automatically. They don't have control over them. So sometimes it's like watching a person on a treadmill that kind of goes up and down, right? Because they can't keep up all the time, or they're going too fast, or they're going too slow. So there's an entertainment aspect to that as well. And then there's a typical networking reception on Thursday night, and on Friday it's just more panels, more interviews, and then we cut out usually around 3:00 on Friday afternoon.
Nice, yeah. I've been to Columbia's a beautiful place to go. So first of all, if you haven't been, it's very nice. And I think what I'm particularly looking forward to some of these bigger ideas. Like I tend to do a lot of and I go to a lot of tech conferences because that tends to be the stuff I'm doing day to day. But it's always fun to kind of like recenter, kind of see where people in the industry are thinking and these shifts. And then particularly, I think it's an interesting blend of public and private sector, which you don't always get those two kind of worlds colliding as you were in a single place. But I mean, there's so much of our work that exists across both of those fields, and I think there's also a lot of room for collaboration, between the two that to kind of help people kind of talk about those things and kind of bring those different pieces together, because it doesn't happen in many places. And I should mention academia as well. Kind of getting all three of those folks in a room is going to be really interesting.
It really does bring the three pillars of geospatial together, right? The government, the private sector, and the academia. And, as we all interact, and it's probably, and I say this all the time on LinkedIn, it's the most slept on conference in geospatial, because you get to meet luminaries, you get to meet people who are making decisions, you get to meet people who have the use cases that you want to learn about. And just by showing up and just by talking, and you get they're relatively easily, they're accessible because you're at the same event, and it's a very relaxed event as far as like the networking aspect of it goes.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. So how can people find out more? Where should they go?
how can they get more information? I'll include everything that
Mhm.
Tee, you're going to mention in the show notes. Just be aware.
Yeah.
So if you're
So-
looking for that, it's down there.
And so the main site is geography2050.org. That's where everything is. And also, if you're just curious, every Geography 2050 has been recorded. So you can go down into and look at the first one back in 2015, or go to the one, not that I'm biased or anything, but go to the one on risk that took place in 2023. And the foods one that took place in St. Louis back in 2022 during lockdown was very interesting. And you can see people like the director of NGA and director of FEMA on stage talking about how geospatial technology changes their mission.
Yeah, I think that's going to be cool to have kind of all those different groups in one room. Yeah, before we kind of wrap up, any other things you kind of want to talk about from things you're seeing, stuff you're excited about, at the event, outside of the event? What's top of mind for Tee right now?
My 10 meters right now is Climate Week, right? Because that's just nuts. Arvid posted something on LinkedIn today. There's another happy hour. I'm like, dear God, I don't need another thing for Climate Week. My schedule's already completely, I'm so overlapped. My lift bill during Climate Week is going to be nuts. But I like the fact, because last year when I went to Climate Week, there was one geospatial thing. That was Arvid's EO thing over on 34th. This year, there's a lot more geo happening. And I give all that credit to Priscilla Cole. After I gave her the Geospatial Risk Conference, she ran with that. She's really building that infrastructure between climate risk and geospatial. And then for me, after that, I focus on Geography 2050. And that, again, that's, to me, Geography 2050 is just an amazing conference. I like the vibe. I like its academic. I like the academicness of it, right? Now we're actually learning stuff. We're talking to each other. It's a free flow of information, free flow of ideas. And also, New York in the fall. How can you go wrong?
You can't. I know that one true. Yeah. The subways aren't melting you anymore, and
Yeah.
the weather's perfect, so it's pretty good. Yeah, Climate Week, I agree. It feels like, if you've ever been to like South by Southwest, where everything's like, all the way across the city, you're running around trying to figure out where to go. It's kind of like that. But yeah, Priscilla's done a great job of kind of building some of those bridges between that, climate and risk space, and then into geospatial. And I think there's a ton happening this year, and we're starting to see these, I think, communities that really thrived a lot during, like the pandemic and things like that were sort of virtual. I think like really starting to come out and, and show and, really build connections in the real world, which is really exciting. And that's very cool. And you're, credit to you, you're doing a ton of work on that as well as a, kind of a community builder and, kind of holding dialogues and doing a ton of work to build those connections, and also the events and all these different pieces. So kudos to you as well in terms of building all these things out too.
Yeah, but I hate the FOMO I have now all the time.
It's incredibly hard to like get you. There's a lot to get to and go to, and I think that's like the fun of Climate Week and kind of the downside. But like that's why I say it's like South by Southwest. You're making decisions between, do I see this band or that band, and who am I going to miss between that might have something cool happen. So
the thing that I think a lot of us need to get together between the two Climate Week, between next year's Climate Week, and decide on which app we're going to put everything on. Is it going to be Luma or Eventbrite or something else? Because I have got 3 calendars running right now, and I had to get out a notepad the other day and start writing things down like it was the 1990s to figure out what my schedule was, right? Because your event on Tuesday bumps up against the Out in Climate event, but I have like an hour of non-overlap there. So it's just nuts.
Yep. It's a busy week for sure.
Yeah.
There's a ton going on. So it'll be exciting and a bit stressful as well, if you can throw that on.
Yeah. I'm not looking forward to my lift bill.
Yeah. Gosh, there you go. Yeah. Well, there's subways too. We got some of that going on.
Yeah, but they take so long.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, yeah. So
but then after Geography 2050, it kind of goes like, then there's North 51 in January, which I look forward to every year, and then Climate Tech Connect next fall. My life's just conference with work in between.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that fall is that season for many conferences, and then you get a break, and then it's right back to it in January. So
at some point, going back to the calendar thing, though, so at some point the geospatial community needs to have a universal calendar.
That is something that is needed. I do agree with that. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to keep track of everything.
November 20th to 21st. It's fine. It's next month. You're good.
Yeah. So yeah, for everyone interested, geography2050.org. I'll put all the relevant links in the show notes. That's November 20th and 21st out here in New York City at Columbia University. Yeah. If you have any questions, obviously, wherever this is posted in your podcast channel, YouTube, wherever that is, feel free to drop a comment. And yeah, Tee, thanks again, not just for coming on the show, but you're an incredibly, impactful individual in our space, a community builder, kind of champion of all the things that are happening. And there's a lot of work that goes into these events. I know that. So thanks for everything that you've done. And I'm really looking forward to being there at Geography 2050 and, kind of actually being a part of it. So it'll be fun.
It'll be great to have you. And I appreciate all the kudos.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, yeah, Tee, thank you again. And we will see you in New York in November.